Welcome to On the Edge with April Mahoney Brains. Here, this is the spot where the conversation is pointed, the guests are sharp, and the responses are never dull. Welcome home, Brains. There's only one requirement to hang out on the edge, is that you open your big brain and close your small mind. Did you bring your thinking caps? It's time to put them on, because the conversation starts now. To On the Edge with April Mahoney Brains. How are you today? You're at your favorite spot. Yes, the place where you park, where the conversations are pointed, the guests are sharp, and the responses are never dull. Today, we're going to talk to Jillian Deamer down there in Georgia. I wish I was down there so I could have me some sweet tea and some cornbread and a good lunch and a good conversation. But she's going to bring the conversation home to us. And we're going to talk about something, and I'm going to put a little bit of a spin on it because we're going to talk about recovering from a narcissist. You know, you hear that term, people are throwing it out like $5 bills. But what is it? Who is it? And people don't realize that when you're living with the narcissist, you're being abused. When people talk about abuse, they mostly tend to physical abuse, but the mental abuse, the psychological abuse, what's ingrained in your brain, the neurolinguistic programming that you set up in your own mind, that you start to believe that you're not worthy, that you're not good enough, that everything is your fault, that when people are gaslighting you, you really catch on fire because you're starting to believe it. So we're going to talk about that with Jillian, but also the steps to recovery, because again, that's hard. When you close your eyes, you still see this person, you still hear this person, and heaven forbid you was married to him, or you were raised by him, or you have kids with them. So let's talk to her about that and a whole lot more. Let's welcome her to the show. How are you, Jillian?
Good. Happy to be here. Thank you, April.
I'm happy to have you. Tell my brains a little bit about you and how you show up in the world.
Yes, I'm a narcissistic abuse recovery specialist. So I primarily help adults who were actually raised by a narcissist understand their crazy making childhood and how it is still impacting them now so that they can go on to heal, transform, and thrive.
Okay, so let's start with healing. All of us have scars.
Yes.
All of us have
Mhm.
parents that, back in the day when I grew up, whooped your tail. But what is a narcissistic parent like? What does that look like? Frame that for us.
To me, a narcissistic parent is sustained abuse because it is psychological and emotional. It could be emotionally abusive or emotionally neglectful. So basically, your entire childhood revolves around the parent, what they need, what they want, and they can't even see what you need and what you want. And you're a child. So, of course, you're going to have needs and emotional needs. And you're not seen in that home. Like, you're not seen for who you are. You're not even allowed to be yourself because that if you were to become your full self, then your narcissistic parent would lose power over you. So it's all about them. The whole world revolves around them, and they make you out to be the bad person, the crazy person, or even if you are the golden child, then they pit you against other family members. And it's just this whole crazy, chaotic environment that
It's
is
super
just
sad.
ongoing.
It's super
Mhm.
sad because just from the outside, thank the Lord I didn't have that. I had very in tune, loving, engaged parent and a step parent that were just phenomenal. But looking at it from the outside, you don't really realize that you're being neglected or being abused until you get around other kids, maybe 13, 14, and you start seeing this. And then as you evolve, this imprint is already embedded in you.
I don't even know if you still know, honestly, because a lot of the time I didn't know I was abused until I was in my 30s.
Wow.
It took me that long because it was my normal. And a lot of times the parent will cut you off from other people and you don't spend as much time, say, in other children's homes. And they kind of keep you close sometimes, especially the more severe ones. So if it's your normal behavior, and like I said, it's a sustained abuse, like it's happening very frequently. It's not kind of like a one-off type things where maybe your parent smacks you or spanks you or something. It's so when it becomes your normal, how would you know that it's abusive?
Right. And it's crazy
Mhm.
because, again, from the outside looking in, this seems like it's epigenetical, where it is ingrained down in the DNA, down into the nucleus, because I hurt people.
Mhm.
And I don't think that a person would wake up one day and say, "Oh, I want to have this child," and then have this child, and then say, "Okay, I'm going to torture them and I'm going to abuse them." I think that it is a learned behavior that is trickled down. Are you finding that that might be a systemic issue, or is where do you think that it may blossom from?
Yeah, I think that does sometimes play a role in it. And also, I think a lot of times the parent has unhealed trauma.
Right.
So, and they're kind of stuck in their own trauma and chaos that is in their mind and nervous system, and they don't know another way. So they then take it out on those around them. So they're coming from a traumatic place too, a lot of times.
How did you
So
find as your zone of genius? Not getting, too personal, but did you seek counseling? Did you have, you know, other issues that contribute to that? Did you find it hard to sustain and have relationships growing up?
yeah, well, multiple things. I found out in my late 30s that my mother had narcissistic traits, and I didn't realize it until I started to notice my now ex-husband doing similar things.
Mm,
And there was one night where he was trying to um, destroy something that good that was going to happen to me the next day. And my mother had a tendency to do that as well. Like they don't want you anything good to be happening to you. Like it all has to happen for them. And so I'm like, oh my God, like my mom would do the same thing. And then I started to notice other similar traits. I wouldn't say he was as extreme as my mother, but it is on a continuum. And so we were seeing a marriage counselor that we saw 2 times together. And then at one point, she wanted to just see me by myself. And so she was the one that brought into my awareness this narcissistic codependency entanglement dance that I was in. And when I was reading, she recommended this book called The Human Magnet Syndrome by Ross Rosenberg. And so I ordered the book and I read it. And oh my God, I felt sick to my stomach because I've been in this dance with these type of people my whole life. And I also like to be clear too, like someone doesn't have to be diagnosed as a narcissist to be narcissistic abusive. Like I see it as kind of like two different things. Like people can still be psychologically and emotionally abusive to you without being defined as a narcissist. Because I think a lot of times that prevents people from seeking healing because they think, well, he wasn't diagnosed, or how do I get him diagnosed? And it doesn't matter if he is or isn't, or she is or isn't. It's the behavior.
right. Because a lot of times,
Mhm.
again, like I said, people just lump everything into one container. And
Yeah.
that's not necessarily the case. But if you have a person that has this tendencies, and then they mix it with drugs or that liquid courage,
Yep. Hmm.
it can really snowball. Um, and it's hard. I think they kind of all mesh together, but it's hard to say an abuser versus a narcissist because, as I said in the beginning, I believe that they're intertwined. Can
Hmm.
you define that or those characteristics a little sharper for someone that might be experiencing this but didn't realize it?
Yeah. The biggest trait for a narcissist is lack of empathy. So just let that sink in for a minute, because if they're a parent, they can't empathize with their kids and their emotional experience. So that is the major trait. And then they also can be controlling, they can be manipulative. They do gaslighting where they make you question your reality. They're excessive liars. A lot of times they are addicts, whether it's with alcohol or drugs or porn or whatever. Because they're, like I said, they're also coming from a traumatized place, usually.
Wow.
Yeah.
That's a lack of empathy. I don't know how I could not. Sympathy and empathy are two different
They are.
characteristics,
Yes.
but not to just kind of care. But again, like
Mhm.
I said, I tell people all the time, I have one in my family. My brother was a cold piece.
Yeah.
Woo-hoo!
Yeah.
Yes, yes, he was. But I was a sharper knife. I wasn't going for it.
That's good.
And I
Yeah.
shut it down.
Yeah.
But it's because on the other side of the spectrum, I had so much love and I had so much sympathy, empathy, and I had courage to say, you
Mhm.
know what, this is not right. But they can wear you down.
Oh, they will try their hardest to wear you down. Yeah. And then the other thing, too, that people have to consider is that the narcissist is coming to you with a false sense of self,
Hmm.
right? They portray what they want the world to see, to the extreme, right? Because they're shameful of their true self and who they are deep down. So they bury that and then they portray this false self. And usually, if a narcissist is with someone, that other person's usually a codependent. So the codependent has no sense of self. So if you're being raised by a narcissist, you're more than likely being raised by a codependent. So here you have somebody with a false sense of self and another parent with no sense of self. So how are you supposed to develop a sense of self? And plus, abuse disconnects you from the self anyway. So you grow up having like no idea who you are. Like, just you can't identify your needs, you can't identify your wants, you have zero direction. You're just going along with what other people want. So you become massive people pleasers or become codependents themselves, or they could also become a narcissist themselves. It just kind of depends on which side of the spectrum they fall.
But I hear people always talk about the narcissist. Is there
Mhm.
any hope for them? Number one, they're in this place of self righteousness where they don't think anything that they're doing is wrong
Mhm. Right.
anyway.
Right.
But, they have to look in the mirror and they also have to listen to what people are saying. I mean,
Mhm.
you can pretend to not pay attention to what people are saying, but it's very prevalent because a narcissist is not just with one person. That is their character trait when they go to work, when they go to
Mhm.
school, when they build
Mhm.
relationships, when they raise their children. This is innately who they are. Is there any hope for them?
Very little hope because again, you have to want to seek help to get help, and they don't think there's anything wrong with
I just don't. I,
them.
I just don't want to believe that. I really don't want to believe that. Again, identifying it as like an alcoholic that comes home and, oh, okay, well, I only have a bottle of wine every night at 5 o'clock, but I get up and go to work. Okay, I'm not
Mhm.
an alcoholic, or I only watch porn, at a certain
Mhm.
time, but for hours I can't get away from it,
Mhm.
or I only go to the refrigerator for entertainment. So it's another form of addiction, but there's help
Yeah.
for them. But you've got to realize, or pattern of behavior, a narcissist against a narcissist. So if you're a narcissist and your parent is one, that is a dynamic that is just, it's like you're dueling with yourself.
Mhm.
Really hope that there's hope. And I'm speaking to the narcissist right now out there in the audience that's listening. You know you've got issues. Really, you know that you're not very nice and kind,
Yeah.
or labeling you, or look back,
Yeah.
write a journal, listen to what people are saying. How did you find yourself wanting to not only heal, but
Mhm.
take it to the next level and help others heal?
Yeah, I thought when I left my mom to begin with that I was just better because I wasn't with her anymore. And then I became aware, like I said, in my late 30s, that I wasn't healed and better, and I had married someone very similar to her. So then again, when I got divorced, I again thought, well, I removed myself from the situation, so I'm good, right? No, my nervous system was so dysregulated, and that was that way my whole life. So I didn't know that depression and anxiety were they're not normal states of being. Like you're not supposed to be in those type of states. And in fact, I didn't even realize I was depressed until one day I wasn't anymore after I started to get help because it was just my normal state. And so I made some poor choices in 2019 where once I realized I made these bad decisions, I was like, you know what? No, it's time to get serious. So I decided I was going to triple down on my healing journey at the end of 2019 before 2020 was a thing. So that worked out for me because I was able to be home and really, I was putting in 80 to 100 hours of work on myself every month. Like it was just enough is enough. I did not want to repeat the life that I was living for the first 4 years. So I got super serious about my healing and I learned so much, especially about the nervous system. The nervous system is really key. Regulating the nervous system, being aware of your triggers and dealing with those things and doing a lot of shadow work, belief work, things like that. And once I got to a point that I was feeling really good, like I was feeling the best I've ever felt in my entire life, all of a sudden these doors opened to me to become certified in different modalities. And one of them was being a narcissistic abuse specialist, somatic trauma informed. It was just like one door after another kept opening. So I just kept walking through the door. And I was like, you know what? I would like to help other people because, especially those that were raised by one, I don't think there is a lot of information out there because, like, I know when I first started becoming aware of this and looking, I couldn't really find that much about it because a lot of times they mainly focus on, say, the narcissist, like that you're in a relationship.
Right.
But when you're raised with one, you develop all these coping slash survival strategies and you become things like people pleasing or perfectionist, overachieving, maybe struggle with addiction yourself, and all these different things. And so I wanted to help people learn how to break free from that abuse
Mm.
once and for all. And there it is possible to break free. But
Now,
there's different components to it.
right. Okay. Now, the work that you do, I've had other guests on my show that have talked about RTT, rapid transformation.
Hmm.
They've talked about hypnosis. They've talked about
Hmm.
leveling their energy with Reiki. They've
Yeah.
talked about talk therapy.
Hmm.
I've had some people that have went to Costa Rica, honey, and did ayahuasca to get
Yeah. Yeah.
to break free from it.
Yeah.
What are some of the tools in your toolbox that you share with your clients?
Yeah, and all of what you just mentioned is very helpful. I'm not trained in any of those things, but I am trained in a lot of somatic trauma informed therapies. And I think what everyone has to remember too is like there is a healing component to narcissism, which you can use things like energy work, somatic, trauma informed type work. I use a little bit of NLP and things like that. But there's also a transformation part of it because healing and transformation aren't the same thing.
Right.
So even if you heal from like a past abusive relationship, if you don't reinsert new programs and new ways of being and a new sense of identity, you're highly likely to end up in another abusive relationship because you didn't change those patterns. So there's that transformation part that I also do. And then there's also the thriving part, like setting them up for success to like things like having boundaries. Because a lot, if you're raised in a narcissistic home, you don't have any boundaries. In fact, I didn't even know what boundaries were until I was in my 30s. I'm like, oh, that's a thing because you weren't allowed, like you're,
Right.
yeah, to have any of those. Even things like self-care. And I'm not talking like bubble baths and pedicures and stuff. I'm talking about honoring how you're feeling. I'm talking about getting yourself what you need, like whether, you know, if you're hungry, eat, like, things like that. Cause you would have no idea how many people don't eat when they're hungry. Like they just keep going and going and going. And then they're like, oh, it's 9 o'clock tonight and I haven't eaten anything. Yeah,
Positive
you need,
affirmations.
yes, exactly. You need nutrients and you got to like change those beliefs, but you also have to put in new beliefs because otherwise it's just going to default back to the old belief. Like you've had these beliefs ingrained in your heads forever. So,
And again, ingraining those, but also having them to pull back on.
yeah.
I, I
Mhm.
got a girlfriend, and this is no disrespect to anybody that goes to talk therapy. You know, I am a strong proponent of anything that works for you, do it. But you lived it for 30 years, and now you've been talking to the therapist for 15 years. That's 45 years of
Mm.
trauma.
Yeah.
When are you going to get over it? When, and I shouldn't say get over it. When are you going to get with it? When are you going to understand that this is a component of who you are? It is not, it doesn't dictate who you are, but this is a part of your life. This is a part of your story because you want to end this. You don't want to continue it. But if you
Mhm.
keep talking about it every Thursday at 3 o'clock for an hour for the next 15 years, I'm thinking you're re traumatizing yourself.
Yeah, yeah, you're very likely to do that. And talk therapy is only going to get you so far. I, there's no way I would be where I'm at today and with talk therapy in a year. No way.
You know, and
Yeah.
it's difficult. And
Mhm.
then you look at the person that you're doing all the work, and
Yeah.
then you're still going home to the same old booger wolf because your
Mhm.
mother. It's hard for kids to separate. You can't separate from your parents. Well, you can as you get older, but
Mhm.
not like you can from a spouse or a boyfriend or a girlfriend, something like that, or friends. I
Yeah.
have friends that I have had, and I don't call them friends, they're frenemies. How about
Mhm.
that? Because I recognize who you are. And I'm talking to some of y'all, you watching right now. Okay. I love you in your space, but in your space, you don't have
Yeah.
a front row seat. You may think you do, but you don't. I honor you. I, try to love you. I try to support you, but I also will cut you off
Yeah.
because that is dangerous to my mental health. And it's all about me at a certain point.
Mhm.
It's not about still supporting you. I had one situation, a friend, that everything was about her. She would call and I'd pick up the phone, or you do this or I do that. I'm always there. I had a situation, never asked me, are you okay? Who does it involve? Nothing. It was
Yeah.
not reciprocal. And I'm
Mhm.
thinking to myself, this is not a friendship.
Mhm.
They're using you. So
Yeah.
you have to look at, again, your circle of influence because you are what you eat. Right, Jill?
Mhm. Exactly. You have to be very careful about that because, I mean, these traits can show up everywhere. Like you were saying, in your friendship circle and your place of work, in your churches, in your community. So you just have to be on guard with it and being able to notice, like you're able to notice, wait a minute, something's not right here. But the thing is, if that's your norm and it hasn't been brought to your awareness that that's your normal and that their behavior isn't normal, you're going to fall right into it. Like, I mean, a perfect example, I love watching cult documentaries. I'm just fascinated because they all kind of play the same script and you're just waiting, like, like at first the guy or the girl seems like this great, wonderful person. They're really caring and they kind of bring everybody in. And then some switch gets flipped and then all of a sudden it gets crazy. And it's like, that's at the cult level, at like a bigger group level, but that's what happens in people's homes. Like it's the same thing. Like they'll love bomb you in the beginning, or you'll have moments where they kind of notice you distancing yourself from them. So they try to reel you back in. Yeah, and then it's all that love bombing, and then once you're back in, then they show their true colors and everything goes crazy. So the best thing is just kind of notice some of the signs. Like notice like, wow, that person seems really full of themselves, or that person seems like I know my one person in my life, like he would just talk so much about himself. Like even we'd have a bunch of people over and he would just talk about all these wonderful things he was doing and everything he's doing and blah blah blah, for like an hour. And I'm like,
You say like for an hour,
it's like let's have these people are here, let's have a conversation. Like conversations are
or
multiple people
a
speaking.
press conference for 90
Yeah,
minutes.
exactly. Yeah, it was
you know,
insane, like
but it's
if
a
somebody's just,
part of the brainwashing.
yeah, lots of brainwashing.
And
Mhm.
again, I had another guest on my show that has just after 30 years been released from a guru.
Yeah.
And
Mhm.
I was like, she still, when she mentions his name, her body just kind of like bobs.
Yeah.
And it was ingrained in her. It
Mhm.
will never go away. It's now to the cellular level, it's to the DNA. What do we do to heal? Give us some suggestions on recovery.
For me, in that type of case, you'd have to do a lot of nervous system work, like really get familiar with your nervous system, what's going on, what different statements, like how you react to them, get beneath that, go the story, a lot of journaling work. You really have to recognize your stories, the stories that are running through your body and your mind, and you have to start changing and shifting those into a different story, one that serves you, because you keep hearing the same things over and over and over and over again.
Well,
So it's like you have to wash your brain, right? Like your brain
I'm
washed, but you
doing a
have to clean
nutrition
it.
class right now. I'm sorry,
Mhm,
but before I forget this, diet.
mhm.
I mean, I didn't realize how close this is the nutrition because it is now at the genome level. It is, it's at the cellular level. That's deep. And
Yeah.
so you're trying to reprogram everything. And it is an inside job.
Yeah.
So now you journal, as you say, you write this down, you figure out what your triggers are,
Mhm.
you know what that is. And then after you have that in place, where do you move?
Yeah, you really need to do this with someone as well. You can't just do this type of work by yourself, like whether it's a practitioner, specialist coach, therapist, a trauma informed therapist, somebody that really understands the level this goes down to point these different things out to you. Like I'll have different clients and they'll kind of say different stories in different ways, but it's the same theme. So it's like I challenge them on those stories. It's like, okay, where did this story come from? How old were you? What started this? Like kind of going back and closing the loop in a way that serves them.
Mhm. But also allowing them to recognize that this is what it is because you've had an aha moment. Oh, I didn't realize that, this, or I didn't realize that I was sitting there, every night drinking this bottle of wine. It just became
No.
a habit.
Mhm.
It becomes a pattern.
Becomes our habit. Yeah, it becomes our stories. We like to carry around our stories,
So
right?
now, where are you with your mom at this point in your life, if you want to share?
Yeah, I will share actually. My mom, I went no contact with her in 2014 for 8 years. And then in late 2022, my stepfather reached out to me and let me know that she was in her last days. And I went and saw her. I went to say goodbye and get closure for myself. And I just felt like it was something I really needed to do. And I had done so much grief work. That's another thing I can talk about, but so much grief work and healing work around it that I was able to just almost feel sorry for her. Like when I saw her on her deathbed, and I actually did feel a lot of love. I was like, this is my mom. And she had her own traumatic background, and whether it was born, she was adopted, so I don't know what her birth parents were like, so it could have been genetic for her too. And I know she had a lot of mental illness, because mental illness will also present as narcissism a lot of times too. So I was able to just spend some time with her the last 2 days, and I left her in December, and I didn't talk to her again or see her again, and she passed away in January of 2023.
Wow. But at
Yeah.
least you had that opportunity. And I tell people all the time, that's, I love hospice people. I love people that work
Yeah.
in hospice because they are the gateway to your transition.
Yeah.
And so many people have told me that this is the last person that they were able to confess to, that they
Yeah.
were able to identify, that they were able to release, to respond. There has been healing there. Give me my flowers now. Let's have the conversation now.
Mhm.
Let's be honest with one another. Everything is not for a lifetime. There's
Yeah.
a reason and there's a season. But if you are clear, you can make that transition with no doubt. Because that's the hardest part is, oh, I wish I had had this conversation with my mother, or I wish I had been able to uh, confront my abuser,
Mhm.
or I wish that I was able to. I have one woman on my show. She was 45, 46. Her mother never said the words, I love you. I thought that was so strange. I
Mhm.
mean, never, she said she never heard those words. So, was she able to say that to her mother in the transition? Was she able to really identify with what love is? Were you able to disseminate into your own children what love is and what it feels like? Because it's different for everybody,
Yeah.
what that level is. So, working with clients, tell me a success story.
Yeah, I think my success stories, I mean, they're all kind of a little bit similar, is that they were able to reconnect to themselves, like really understand what makes them tick, really get the boundaries, really know what they're available for and what they're not available for, and be able to know what serves them, and not get into abusive relationships. So I know I had one client that she was finally able to fulfill and pursue her dream job, where before she didn't feel like she could do that, or she felt that she needed to stay small, right? Because, if you're in abusive relationships, you present as being very small because you give away all your power to them. So it's like, I don't know, watching them take back their power and cultivate it and really go on to lead lives on their terms, I found to be really rewarding.
That's beautiful. That is absolutely beautiful. And like you've done, they've been able to, again, not only heal, but transform.
Yeah.
And
Transform and thrive.
right.
Yeah.
Transfer.
Transform and
Tell us
thrive.
what is transformation.
Because to me, transformation is taking all those old beliefs, all those old stories, the old identity, and replacing it with something new, ones that serve you. So instead of being like, okay, I was a child that was abused and playing the victim, like the victim identity is pretty strong. And yes, you were a victim of abuse. I'm not diminishing that at all. But now you're somebody that broke free from abuse, right? Now you're someone that reclaimed your life from being abused. Now you're someone that's thriving because of the abuse. Like, can you see like how different that feels when you say that?
Mm-hmm.
That's a transformation. So you start to change your identity, start to change your beliefs and stories.
That's wonderful. Well, let's change your belief in stories. Let's get to the lighter
Yeah.
part of the interview.
Yeah.
I want to ask you some fun questions.
Okay.
If you could time travel, Jillian, go to the past, stay here in the present, or shoot off to the future, where would you land?
I think I would still stay here in the present. Like, I feel like this is a really good place. For me, like, I'm grateful for my past because it led me here to where I am today. And I think I'm like being in the present and being excited about what the future may bring, the anticipation of it. So
If I asked you the question, I'd like for you to end the sentence. I am.
I am, gosh, that could be so many things. I am happy right now.
Happy? Okay.
Mhm.
That's beautiful. If you could go back and talk to a 15-year-old Jillian Deamer, what would you say to her?
I would tell her that she's going to make it through. It's all going to end up being okay, and to learn how to invest money as soon as possible.
That's good.
Yeah.
That's a good suggestion. If you
Yeah.
were an appliance in the kitchen of all places, what would you be?
I think I would be a tea kettle.
Really?
Yeah, because the tea kettle has one job to do, that's to boil water. So it just seems like very low stress. It
Exactly.
knows what
I've
is
been hearing that.
expected of them at any
I've been
given.
hearing that phrase. I heard it last night at the concert. I've been hearing it all the time. Said you only got one job.
You only got one job, boil water, and plus you get to make delicious tea for somebody to enjoy and
Absolutely.
soothe by. Yeah.
If you were an animal, what animal would you be?
I'd want to be an elephant. I think they're so majestic. I love
They
them. Yeah.
are. They
Or
are.
I don't know. Can I have two? Like a panda bear would
Yes.
be really fun too. I've been watching so many funny panda bear
Yeah.
videos lately where they're
Panda
just very
bears.
playful.
They
Yeah.
just arrived back here in San Diego at the zoo,
Yeah.
and I
Yeah. I
mean,
saw it.
people are lined up to see
Yeah.
them eat bamboo.
I don't know.
They do. They love them.
They look
They
like goofy
absolutely love them.
animals. I like big goofy animals.
And I
Yeah.
went to. I was in Thailand a few months ago, and I got to go to an elephant sanctuary.
Oh, that's been on my bucket list. How
And
was it?
let me tell you, they you have a conversation with them through the eyes. The mothers were just wonderful, how they nurtured their kids, how they smacked them with their trunk if they, get over here and do this and do that. But they were prideful and they were big and they were majestic, as you said, and they just loved one another. But they were also very powerful and they never forget. So
Yeah.
tick that off your life list. You will be forever changed. They are really, really wonderful.
Yeah, I'll definitely have to get the details from you when we get off the call.
Absolutely.
Like, yeah.
If you were a car, what would you be?
Gosh, that's a hard one. If I was a car, um, I think I would be my dream car because that way I would have it. It would be the Lexus RX 350. Like, I just think it's stylish but practical and has a modern look to it. Luxury. Yeah.
Well, you deserve
Curious.
all of that.
Yeah.
All of that because you've been through a lot, but you have been able to be spout off like a teapot.
Yeah. One job to do.
One job, you can make
Is to
it
heal
happen.
and live your life. That's your job.
Absolutely. You have the courage and the strength of an elephant. You are present. You are living in the moment. And the most important thing is that you're happy.
Yeah.
I am so glad that you were here with us on the edge. How can my brains get in contact with you? I want them to have a conversation because brains, I tell you all the time, you don't know what you don't know.
It's very true. Once you do, you can do something about it.
You can do something about it. You can change. And if you decide to stay where you are, you can't say that you weren't provided the option or the opportunity. Give Jillian a call. She knows what she's doing. How do they get in contact with you, Queen?
They can visit my website at jilliandeamer.com. And there's also a free download on the website. And it's called Understanding the Impact of Being Raised by a Narcissist. So I'll give you a lot of insight. And then I'm on social media as well, Facebook at Jillian Deamer, Instagram at Jillian Deamer, and TikTok, I am Jillian Deamer.
Well, Jillian Deamer's all over the planet.
Yes.
Wait.
And you can find me on this podcast too.
Absolutely. We're going to replay it. We're going to rewind it. We're going to put it out. And I want you to do the deep dive, brains, because if you're used to a certain situation, it's like if you have a size 8 foot and you've been wearing a size 7 shoe, it's too tight, baby. And if you put on a 9, it's too big. You got to find the right fit. Right there, that can help you find the right fit. All right. Go in, love, like, share, and subscribe. Love, like, share, and subscribe. We've just hit our 1,000th. Jillian, I think you are going to be 1,002.
Oh, wow.
So we are excited about that. We really want to share the information, the wealth. Go back. You can go back 3 years and find some very relevant information. Thank you so much, Jillian, for being here on the edge. We wish you only the brightest light and the highest, greatest good.
Thank you, April. You too. Thank you for having me.
All right. Bye, brains. Have a good day.